Two friends, Alan Dale and Jerry Carew, who grew up just a few streets apart in St. John's East End, have been separated by Canada's geography for 3 decades. They came together virtually during the pandemic to chat about like-minded interests. Alan lives in PEI and Jerry in Newfoundland. Thriving in remoteness has been a common theme for both of them during the pandemic. Gale Force Wins, the podcast is the result.
And welcome to another edition of Gale Force Wins. It's great to be back at it again. My name is Alan Dale, and with me as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's, Jerry Carew. How are you, Jerry?
Well, East End St. John's is blowing a gale and raining this morning, so that's a consistent theme. But I'm excited, to be honest with you, because we have on the podcast today, Sheldon Payne. I first met Sheldon in 2008. I was actually running the digital side for TC Media, all the newspapers, and Sheldon was doing a presentation, I believe it was at the Capitol Hotel. I sat and listened to him, and it was, Sheldon, you were probably the first person that spoke in terms that were easy to understand, because sometimes in the digital space, people talk way over people's heads. So for that reason, I decided I actually was going to help out on the business development side, and I've been doing that ever since, 13, 14 months now. So I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, Jerry, I remember you telling me how highly you thought of Sheldon and how forward-thinking he was many, many years ago before your relationship with Newfound Marketing ever started. And that's why I think it's such a natural fit for the both of you. But anyway, enough of that. We'll get into all of that. So without further ado, Sheldon, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Alan. Jerry, it's great to be here. I can't believe it's actually taken so long to get on the show, right? But that's it. When things are going really well. So yeah. So my name is Sheldon Payne. I'm the owner of Newfound Marketing. We're a small digital agency in St. John's, Newfoundland, and we help brands with their digital presence. So we start with web, and then pretty much like the way like a lot of good hockey teams are built. You start with goaltending and work their way out. We start with web, and then we work our way out from there. And at the moment, we've got a nice, great young team that are so eager to learn, and it's absolutely amazing. So yeah, no, that's just a small glimpse of who we are.
Sheldon, I can't wait to get into that stuff. But before we go down that path, tell me where you're from. What inspired you to get to where you are right now?
Great question. I grew up in Cowhead, which I think most people just say Gross Mourne. But I grew up in Cowhead, and honestly, I think as I get older, I can't think of a better place to grow up. And one of the things, especially what I found absolutely amazing over the last year and a half, is the number of friends of mine and people that I've seen that have been traveling to Cowhead and Gross Mourne that didn't even know this place existed, or they knew it existed, but they didn't know really how nice it was. So yeah, grew up there, which is fantastic. Moved to St. John's at 18 to attend MUN. And then there's a whole lot more to that story. After university, like many of us, tried to find our way here. I think a lot of us don't really want to leave if we don't have to. But I remember getting my first job opportunity here, and I won't mention who the employer was, but basically, if I would have taken the job, I would be losing money every single month. Because at that point in time, it was just the role itself, and coming out of university with student debt was kind of not in the cards. So at that point, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, decided that we would take the plunge. We had met some friends of ours that had been in Montreal. So we went to Montreal in January of 2004. And I remember the first day, it was bitterly cold. We think about the winters that we have here in St. John's, very different when you get to Montreal and you've got minus 25 and minus 30. And, it was absolutely fantastic. At that point, it took a couple of months, but then I guess where this journey kind of began, I started with a company. It was called Business in a Box. So it was a software company in 2004. The company itself was small. I was employee number 4 only because I showed up 15 minutes after employee number 3 showed up. Other than that, so you can kind of see how small we were, but it was absolutely fantastic. The product itself was, they had sold at that point in time, they were selling roughly about 1,200 business documents and templates that small business owners would need. Companies still in existence today. And but it was absolutely fantastic. It was such a fantastic experience. I got to work with 2, I can't even say innovative. I would say mavericks in the time at that point in time. So this was 2004. We were starting, this is a little bit of a startup for them. And at that point, you had to wear so many hats. And, my role was to come in and work more on looking at it from the small business opportunity. But then with a small team, when you have to do so much, I first got introduced to Google and the Google Ads platform, which for anyone who I've worked with in the past is, it's probably one of the platforms that I absolutely enjoy and I think should be like the first thing you think about after you've got your website set up from any perspective. So at that point, I was able to work for them. I got to learn how to do email marketing, SEO, search engine optimization, copywriting, some sales for the most part. And at that point, there was no YouTube. It was there, but not the YouTube that we know today. Facebook, same, Twitter, all the social networks didn't exist. And so then an opportunity came up after 3 years of being there and learning so much. Had to make a decision to either stay in Montreal or to move on to London, England. So I made that decision. And actually, one thing that I absolutely remember about when I left the guys in Montreal was that we were getting ready to go out for our last team dinner. And anyway, having to work with many hats, the phone rang. So I picked up the phone, I answered the phone, and anyway, I closed the sale. So I was like, there you go, guys, there's supper for tonight right there. Right. And then that was it, that journey was over. So then the journey became of moving to London. And I remember getting there my first day. Luckily enough, someone had given me some advice to find a recruiter. So I did. And I got to London on the 9th of March. And on the 10th of March, I spent the whole day in the city going from interview to interview. And so I did that for a couple of days, meeting so many interesting companies. And this is, again, this is me coming from a small town on the Northern Peninsula, after being 3 years in Montreal, moving into London, that's just the task in itself.
Yeah.
And I remember the next one of the interviews that I got, and some people would maybe call this a red flag, but I completely dismissed it. And they're like, can you go and meet this company? I'm like, sure, yeah, no sweat. It's like, what time? 7 p.m. It's so for some people that's a red flag if you're having a job interview at 7 p.m. So I went in. And at that point in time, I had very little information on the advertising world, like the agency space at that point. So I met directly with the CEO, met with him. The interview went fantastic. I absolutely love the team. I guess another red flag, not being quite aware of the agency world, is at 7 p.m. Not only was the CEO there, but there was a full room of 150 people also working away at 7 p.m. as well. But those things didn't bother me. I think I was just still in the awe, or maybe it was the jet lag of of just being in London and actually being in this absolutely beautiful building at the time. So that role was great. I was able to land the job after 5 interviews, which was, that was one thing in itself, going through 5 rounds of interviews for a role, which was absolutely new to me. And at that point, I was about to enter a completely new world that I had never imagined that I would even become close to being a part of. So the company was Zenith Optimedia. At that point, it was called Zid Digital. And for anyone in the advertising space, they were owned by the Publicis Group. which is one of, the largest advertising agency conglomerates in the world. So I got the job. And even that just floored me. I think at that point, it didn't matter what they offered as a salary. I was looking at, I'm in London. Right. I'm going to work in this nice building with all of these people, which is absolutely fantastic. And then they told me, well, okay, here's some of the accounts that you're going to work on. And the first account was Chevrolet Europe. So not just, actually, it was pretty much all of Europe, excluding the UK. So right. all non-English countries, so multiple languages. So that brought into another new challenge, right? So not only, so I was so adept to working on creating English campaigns for everyone, and now we have to work on multilingual campaigns for 16 or 17 countries. So that was such an amazing adventure.
Sheldon, sorry, what was your role defined as, just so I understand?
So I was the senior international search manager or search marketing manager. For that role. And it was absolutely amazing. We went from a team, at that point, I was, I think the third or fourth person on the team. When I left, we had grown the team to, I think, over 10 people. And I stay in touch with many of the team members there. And, they have all moved on to such great roles. Some are still with the organization, other people have moved on. But that role in itself was kind of like one of these things where you see, what are the possibilities? I remember within the first 4 or 5 days I was there, and they're like, okay, so you have to go to Paris tomorrow. Okay, my mind is just blown. I'm like, oh, what? Yeah, no, okay, yeah. So you got to catch the train, which lucky enough for us was close to where we lived. So we're catching the train, and they send me with 2 other guys, which is great because if I had to go to Paris by myself on my own, I would have not showed up at the right place. Actually, we didn't show up.
You must have been in your 20s or something at this point, were you?
Yeah, mid-20s at that point, and and I actually remember I went with these 2 guys expecting, okay, you guys have been to Paris before. Anyway, we all went to the wrong building. It took us about 4 hours to actually find a place where we had to go. So that was absolutely fantastic. And I think after that, it became a little bit of the norm. I got to travel regularly to Paris, Munich, and Zurich. Like that's where our clients were. So those were absolutely fantastic. I think the next thing that amazed me after that as well is, starting with Google in 2004, and then being able to actually go to the Google headquarters, being in meetings with our Google representatives, seeing things from such a different level than where I was, in the first company that I worked with, which, some of the ideas that we had were still very, very innovative in terms of what we would do. And so that was just mind blowing. And then from there, it was, again, just meeting the team, working with the folks from Google, which was, again, not just absolutely. I think one story that kind of, again, felt like, what kind of dream am I living in is, I remember one meeting we had wrapped up. We were meeting with Hewlett Packard and Google in Dusseldorf. And I remember coming back after the meeting was over, and we're all in the airport, and I'm looking around, and there's like 3 or 4 CEOs and very high level C-suite people, and I'm just like, in conversation with them. And again, so my mind is just like, how is this happening? All right, so that was amazing. Like that role itself will be, I think, I was just so lucky to be there. But I think what it also did for me as well, it gave me the confidence to know that I could actually, that I know my stuff. And I knew that, I am sharing ideas and being able to give feedback and learn from some of the best companies in the world and be kind of at their level. And I think at that point, that's when things begin to kind of click a little bit differently in terms of what my approach was and what my approach would be than in terms of where my career was going to go in the future.
Sheldon,
Sheldon,
sorry, Alan. I just want to jump in there. I actually did some training with Google, and at one point there was discussions about us going to Google. I was all excited, and it turns out, Alan, you'll laugh at this. The training was conducted in PEI of all places. Not to say I was disappointed, but a little bit. Sorry to all of our PEI viewers, but the young lady who was training us was in love with Anne of Green Gables. So we all met in PEI. Anyway, didn't get my trip to California on that one. Sorry. Go ahead, Al.
Sheldon, that's a great journey that you just described. And not only that, but the words that you were using in your journey and how you learn from things and things like what kind of a dream am I living? And those are beautiful way to describe where you were, but I find it fascinating that, I mean, you are the author of this dream. You decided to take those opportunities when those doors opened. You went through them, and I think it's fantastic. So from Cowhead to St. John's, big step there, going into the big city. Going from St. John's to Montreal, big step there, going into the big city. St. John's to London, big step there, going into another big city. What brought you back to Newfoundland? What was the draw? What was it? What did you see in Newfoundland that brought you there?
Well, I think as a Newfoundlander, I think at some point for any of us that go away, I think we want to come home. Like most things, most of us want to come home. In 2008, I got engaged, and so then as time went on, like most things, we kind of had to begin to make a decision. Is it to stay where we are, move ahead with the careers that could have been absolutely been in front of us, or do we look for opportunities to come back home and to be around our families, to grow a family ourselves at that point. And I think for many of us, like that's one of the things that the family support piece is so important. I think I'm so lucky, like with the family that I've got around me, in every direction in terms of the support that we get from there. So I guess another story that led us back home for that is we were actually coming home for a friend's wedding. This was October 2007, and oddly enough, I was looking through the paper because at that point in time, many of the jobs came out on the weekend. That Saturday paper, a lot of the jobs are coming out at that point. And as I was going through the job ads, there was a job ad there, seeking digital marketing director, M5 communications. And, I was like, okay, very interesting. All right. So that's great. So I applied for that role, and I, applied for that in October. We went back to London, and then after that, nothing, crickets for probably about a month to a month and a half. So I was okay, well, that opportunity is passed on, begin to make plans, looking for other opportunities. And then around December, as we were getting ready to come home for the holidays, I was like, well, I'll reach out again just to see. Right. I'm like, yeah, okay. No, you're going to be home. Great. Love to be able to meet you. So I remember coming home, and I think I got home, probably around the 18th or 19th. And then the next day I went in to meet with the HR director at the time, and one of the owners of M5. And so I was talking with them for 20 minutes, and then the owner walked away, and he came back in, and I was like, okay, well, this interview's over. Right. So, and then he said, you got 20 minutes? I've got a week and a half. So I'm like, oh, okay. Right. And I think it's really interesting because this is probably one of the moments right here that really, when you think about how life, like I think if you ever watched the movie called Sliding Doors, it kind of just talks about, it's almost like a butterfly effect of how things change based on an interaction or meeting. So at that point, I was able to meet Gary, who owned M5, And I'm walking in and he's kind of like, who is this guy? Like, why am I talking to this guy? Anyway, so we chat for, I'd say, about half an hour. And I think after that discussion, that's pretty much when the next part of the journey became. We talked about so many things. We talked about our love for hockey, that the both of us had. And anyway, that so we had that conversation, and then over the course of the being home for the holiday break, the opportunity came up. Then what does that look like? Discussing that one, making the decision from there. And then after a little bit of time, I did make the decision to come back. So I made that decision, and it was hard. It was not easy because I absolutely loved everything that I was learning in the role that I had. I absolutely love my team. Like, it's, we would go lunchtime. The 12 of us would just leave at the same time, go for lunch. And that was like every single day. Yeah. Right. So it was a difficult decision to make, because again, I looked at what that career path could have been, where I'm in an opportunity at that point in time, early stages in the digital marketing space, being able to work with, some of the best companies in the world. From there, working with, being able to travel internationally. Like, it was one of these things where it's not an easy decision. But that draw that always kind of pulls us home was also there as well. So that brought me back to M5, and that in itself was such an amazing experience. Again, I was able to find a new team of people. And one thing that I absolutely love about M5, I remember the first, the walk around that you do when you kind of go to a new employer, especially when you got an employer that has like so many people. And you're walking around, and the HR person is like introducing you to someone. And the one thing I think that struck me the most about doing that walk around was, hi, I'm such and such. And then, I've been here for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, 16 years. Like that's I found that was like absolutely amazing, because I knew a little of the company before, but the fact that these people have been around and working for the company for so long was great. And being able to kind of become a part of that team over the time that I was there was absolutely amazing. Again, got to bring new ideas, 2008, to bring the digital environment here, in St. John's and, across Atlantic Canada and parts of Ontario where we were working. It was a fun time to kind of like to be able to see like what those opportunities were. And I remember one request that I had, and it was, got a couple minutes. Yeah, no, sure. Obviously I'm going to talk, yeah. So we're talking to Crosby's Molasses, and we're just kind of curious, like, what could we do?
Yeah.
So that one took a while, but we made some things stick. Right. So, but it worked. But that was the part of it, right? Is, what kind of opportunities existed in that space. So that, that journey was absolutely amazing. And then having to make the decision, to leave that one there was, again, like not an easy one. I think if I can say one thing about the companies that I have worked for in the past, is I've been so lucky to have such good mentors and team members who only just want to see you succeed. I think it's one of those things, like, for people that if you're, we see a lot in the space in the world today where, there's an environment where it's like, don't work for anybody, start your own company, do your own thing. And then, obviously, like that, if that's the choice that you have, then that's absolutely amazing. But I think there's a ton of value in being able to find some really good employers and being able to work with some really good people, and then learning from them. And then maybe you don't need to be, I don't need to start my own thing, but I can be a part of a team and we can do some really, really good stuff. And for me, like all the experiences that I've had up until I started my own company have been absolutely fantastic.
Sheldon, you talk about, being involved in good teams and with great companies and stuff like that. it seemed like every step you've made, you found that. And I think that probably says as much about you as a person as it does about the companies you work with. So you were probably able to form people around you and work collaboratively with a group. And I sense that that says as much about you as it does about the companies that you were in. I love the way you describe you walking through M5 and getting that vibe that you're in a good place, right? And it's really interesting, isn't it? You can walk into companies, and I've done it over the years, and you get a vibe right away. You know if this is a good place to be almost immediately. It's amazing to hear that. So, okay, so to date now, you've worked for different companies. What made you in the back of your mind say, I want my own company. I want to step out of this journey that I'm in, which is a very positive journey. And before I get to that question, I want to make one more comment. And that is, I love the way you described how good life was living in London, working on the international stage. Everything was perfect. The future was bright, yet the draw to Newfoundland was so strong that you were willing to say, okay, I'm willing to look at Newfoundland differently than this wonderful life that I have right now. I think that's amazing. That says a lot about the power of Newfoundland, that statement alone. Anyway, so back to my question. I made a lot of comments, so I should just shut up. People want to hear you, not me. So Sheldon, what was it that made you say, I want to start my own company? When did that happen?
July 2012. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't really looking for it, but fair enough.
What time? What time of day?
Yeah. Probably around noon, actually. So there's two parts to that. The desire to actually have my own company has been around for a long time. And I guess like just the company name that actually we have today, I bought that domain name in 2004. Wow. So that company name has been, it was there as a place of something that I wanted to do for quite a while. Whether or not, at some point when that would move forward, who knew, right? Who knows on the adventure that you're going to go on. But July 2012, I remember going to a startup event. It was out in Barring Park, and at that point in time, I can't remember the name of the event right now. So apologies for whoever hosted the event. But the energy in the room with everyone talking about, starting up a company and what it's like to start up a company at that point was there. So like when that was done, again, like around noon, I kind of had my decision made. I was like, I think now is the time. I think now is a good time to go and start this. Right. So obviously, that's not a decision I can make on my own when you're married. Those are not the things that can happen. So went home, had a good chat, said, okay, great, cool. I'm going to do this. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Regatta day. My wife and I get a call from our doctor. Congratulations, you're pregnant. Right? Just what everyone starting a business wants to know. It's like, okay, fantastic, right? So obviously then we're having questions about what do you do? Do we talk about, the opportunity to go back? And the only thing that I could think of was like the answer to that was absolutely no.
So sorry for interrupting. You've already pulled the plug on M5. You're out on your own at this point?
Already pulled the plug. Already let them know that, I've resigned and I'm into my 2 weeks in terms of, I'm going to be, I think in around 10 days later, I'm going to be, my role there will be finished.
Right.
And, so we had that call, make the decision. And my thought was, I logically absolutely understand that most people would probably definitely want to be able to go and need to go and have the safety, security, the family's coming and everything. My thought, absolutely different. I was like, absolutely not. There is no way that I can, in 20 years from now, speak to my son or daughter, we didn't know at the time, and say, well, Dad, why are you still working here? Like, and talk about, and I was like, no, it has to be like, I'm going to do this, because how can I how would I be able to explain to them that some of the aspirations and dreams that I had, I changed those things because I was going to start a family. So that didn't that is not an easy decision by any means. If anything, it probably gave me even more motivation because it was like, now I've got, it's not just me and Sarah that we've got to, that I've got to take care of. Like this is, now as a whole, it's a whole new ballgame. So that completely changed, what I did, and it made me even more motivated to do what I wanted to do. And again, it's not easy. You hear stories of people being in, working from home, being in the basement and where the companies start. And that was me. Like, I remember being in the basement for at least the first year, working and learning so many things that were not in the digital space. And now we're moving from being a business owner to only just being kind of a part of a team that's, helps on the digital marketing side. And the bumps and bruises that you get in the first few years, and man, you gotta have a thick skin, and you've got to a lot of practices that you need to be able to put in place for that. But then as time goes on, it's worked out. It's the first couple of years, again, it was just myself. From there, I think one thing that allowed me to be able to make the move is that I was able to kind of establish a personal brand a little bit kind of in our space, for a couple of years before I made the move. So then when I made the move, it made to have some of those introductory conversations a little bit easier from there. But yeah, it's been quite the journey to kind of to go through.
Sheldon, before we get into a clear articulation of what it is Newfound Marketing does, I want to circle back and talk a little bit, and we often talk to entrepreneurs and in fact, not only entrepreneurs, but people that are very successful in many different ventures. And you hit the nail on the head there, and that is the importance of having a supportive partner with you, somebody that's kind of grounds you, when you come home at the supper table, or encourages you to go and make that start. Tell me about the importance of that in your life.
Oh, that was absolutely, like, that is, it's one of the things that kind of keeps everything going. And it's being able to come home, not so much in the early years. There's a different, I guess, like there's another point in my journey that's kind of changed a lot of things as well. Right. But in the early years, like I would work a ton, evenings, weekends, like those, I would just be absolutely working all the time. So it was not, from some one perspective, it was great to have Sarah to know, like, to be, she's growing and growing her career at the same time. So we're both going through those things. But I think one thing that actually helped out a lot was while I was home working, and this happened, and this was like, this is such a, that I'll look back as being like one of the other good things that happened, is that because I was home and working in the basement, and Sarah was off on, on mat leave, I would be my breaks would be able to go and spend time with Sophie and do those things. And like, that was a pretty cool year. It's not something that if I was still working like a regular job or had an office, that I'd be able to do. So like, that was a pretty cool year to be able to, like, cool, all right, it's lunchtime now, or have a break, or, if Sarah needed to have some rest as well, then like those are all that, had all those opportunities to be able to do that, together. And that was nice. Like, that was absolutely great. And then the same, like just hearing from, I remember having conversations, especially before my grandfather died. I'd talk to him and he'd always be like, what are you doing now? Like, how's it going? And then once I got to the first employee, how many people you got now? Like, those are all the conversations. And I remember having those with him. Like, that would almost be like, it's almost like it was a script. And anytime that would be the conversations and the question that he'd always have. But I knew, like, he was proud, like that was a part of it as well. And then actually, as I get older and learn more about my grandparents, knowing that, my grandfather was kind of an entrepreneurial person, and I've got so many members of my family on both sides who are entrepreneurial people. One quick story of my grandfather. So, growing up in Cowhead in the 50s, he was the first person to have a truck, right? There's no roads. There's no, so, right. So he's got to go. And I just kind of think of it like his journey of buying like the first truck in the town. Right. So, he's got to get from Cowhead to, I think, like a Corner Brook at that point to even, think about what does a truck look like? And then the whole logistics of like, how do you get a truck to Corner Brook? And then how do you get the truck from Corner Brook to Cowhead? Because there's no roads. There's no roads. There's no roads. It's not like it's not like today where cool, you can just go in and pick it up. Right. So like it has to come in by boat. And then how long does that take?
Yeah.
And then even just thinking of the why, like, why do you want a truck?
Yeah.
Right. So like, it's just hearing that alone and seeing some of those things in terms of what that was like was pretty cool. And they had, his own little shop there for a little bit. So that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Sheldon, it's clear there's a solid foundation beneath you,
Yeah.
And fostered over time, and it's, you appreciate it and you embrace it. You can feel it in your conversation. Now tell me, this is going to be for our audience, not everybody in the audience is going to be digital marketers or in this space, and so as and I know that you can because you're passionate about it, and you've been a part of it for a long time, but give a clear articulation of what Newfound marketing does and why that's so important.
So as I mentioned in the beginning, we're a small digital marketing. We call ourselves an agency, and sometimes I don't really know if we like to put ourselves in that bucket. But I guess for most people, we're a small marketing agency or consultancy, and we help companies basically solve their problems with digital solutions to be able to have business results. And I think that's probably one of the things that might separate us a little tiny bit from some other folks, because we're not typically conventional. The work that you will see that we will do, you're not going to see that on a billboard. You're not going to hear that on radio. So we start again. We start like you're building a hockey team, right? So for us, it's we start with the goaltender, and that's the website. Many people that we work with, in today's space, in 2020, 2021, almost 2022, everybody wants to work on what I find like the shiny ball objects. What is we want to have social, we want to have a good following, we want to do this, we want to do that. And in many cases, you need to have the fundamentals in place first, or you need to have that goaltender. So it starts with the website, and what does that look like? But not only what does the website look like, but what is the purpose of the website? What are you measuring? And not only measuring things like website traffic, but like what are the business results that you get from the work that you're doing? And in many cases, with the teams that we work with, it's about getting the fundamentals in and just working on small actions that sometimes can have big results. So we work, so that's what we look at is like, what are the business results that you're getting? And that's probably an area where when I'm looking at the people that we work with is, how can we have an impact on your business? And I remember, even going through, again, when the pandemic was kind of getting started, for example, I'm thinking about the team. I'm thinking about my team, and I'm like, okay, well, one, I don't want anybody to leave my team, right? Like, I think it could have been easy to like, okay, all right, well, here's an excuse where I could have, made my company smaller. But on the flip side, not only was I concerned with my team, but I'm looking at our clients, and at the same time, they're going through their own challenges. And I'm thinking like, a part of our role in this is to, how do we keep the business results and help our clients with the business results, so the families that are working for their companies have pay and are able to kind of get through it at the same time. And so every time that we bring on new clients now, some businesses are small teams, like 2, 3, 4 people. Other companies are big teams when there's like, 40, 50 people, and sometimes it's, bigger companies. So it's like, when we help their business, then they're able to help their people, and those people put money back into the economy. And the more money that goes back into the economy, the more money that ideally creates more desire for a brand, for a company like ours, and basically it just goes round and round from there. So I think that's what we do, right? And we do that through, again, we've got two very great web developers, and that's, again, like that's where we start, and then we work with companies on their social media, and then we work for companies doing their inbound, and we work doing paid media. So how do we get the most from Google? Google has pretty much been a big part of my career since 2004. And then how do we do that with SEO, email, and looking at like the different solutions? And then more recently, what we've had to kind of do as well is, we're looking at TikTok, for example, and TikTok is one of these channels that a lot of people will, what do I do? I'm not sure. So we kind of have taken a different approach now in the last few months where we need to embrace it.
Right.
Right. So like midsummer, we began having more discussions in terms of, what do we do with this platform? It's not going away. Every couple of months, the stats come out and they've reached this goal and this milestone. So we have to embrace it. And then now, we've got a couple of clients that we've got TikTok strategies and plans for that we're working with. Right. And most of that are not areas where it's coming from me, it's coming from my team. I'm kind of putting in the direction and the vision, like here is an area that we need to be better at. Right. And our clients need to be in the space, but I need you to go and figure that out. Right. Like I can go and figure it out, but at the end of the day, my role is not to go and figure it out. I need to build people around me who can go and figure it out, because a lot of the team members that we have are young and they're starting their careers as well. And I need to give them the confidence to be able to go and do those things. I will be there for reassurance and to be a sounding board, but I can absolutely go and figure it out. It's the way I kind of always think about it is like, can I do the accounting for the business? Yeah, I'm pretty sure at some point, maybe I could go and kind of get by. But at the end of the day, I don't want to do it. I want to go and I want to focus on my business and focus on what we do and focus on our clients and those things. So as our company grows, we're going to be doing the same thing. Is like we'll have a team of subject matter experts, and they will grow their careers hopefully. And if I'm really lucky, I will have people who will stay with me, like people at M5 who have been around for quite a while.
Sheldon, I got to jump in there because, as the business development person for your business, I've seen you nurture the young staff. And I want to throw a bouquet to you because one of the things that I really, really am impressed with, and I've been around business for 30 years, is the work-term students. So you've got a lot of young staff, but in the middle of all that, you bring on work-term students. For me, in the role that I've been in to help bring some business in, helping nurture the students at Memorial University has been incredibly fulfilling. And I just think it's interesting for you as a startup, because you're still really a small startup. Bringing work-term students in is just something that I think a lot more business should do. So, why did you bring that on? Why do you continue to do it?
That one, I think about like the programs that are offered, and digital marketing. I think there's definitely more programs that are available today than there's been in the past. But I think what it comes down to for the most part is like you need to get in and you need to start doing. So with a company like ours, you can do. And the other part too is I'm looking at long term from where our province is going. And at some point I'll say like our province, and hopefully I'll mean like the region or a country at some point. Like, if we're able to kind of grow to be that big. But when I look at like where the province is going, we're going to need talent, and we're going to need talent in this space. And it's going to become really challenging to keep talent. And I think we have to start off, with working with the university and the program that they offer for these young people, so they can see the opportunities that exist. And in some cases, they might say like, wow, I didn't even know this was an opportunity. And it's almost like, it's another semester of learning for them, because like, as you know, like when they come in, there's a lot of like other courses that I will have our students do, but then they get the hands-on learning. And it's also recruitment for us as well. It takes a couple of years, but it allows us to be able to find hopefully our future staff and team members and leaders that we're going to have. So I think at the moment we take on 2 students every semester. We'll continue to do that as long as we can. And it's just, I think it's great to be able for the young people that are here to know like what some of the opportunities exist, and hopefully stay here, or maybe work for companies remotely, because we have remote employees, so they can still stay here and they can still work for companies like Google or Facebook or big companies as well, but do the work here. I think that's what I'm hoping over time.
There's value in that all around, right? When you take a student in, it gives them the experiential learning, because you hit the nail on the head, Sheldon. You've learned it by doing it in your space, and it gives them the opportunity to do it. It's a value for the academic institutions, because they genuinely get the experience that they can't provide in a theoretical setting in the classroom. You're giving them that. So there's value for all. And you're right, it gives a company first look at talent, quite honestly, and grow talent in a fashion that aligns with your company culture, and then eventually make a hire as time goes on. And the value for the student, aside from the experience, is it gives them a look at the companies to say, is this the type of company I want to be involved in? Because just like you, when you walked in to the company and they're all working at 7 p.m., some people might say, oh, this is not for me. This is not where my head is right now, right? So it gives them the opportunity to see a number of companies throughout their academic journey and say, is this the kind of space that I want to be in? Because it's challenging, right, as a student, to figure out where I fit in to the work world, when I graduate. So Jerry's correct to say that's kudos to you for being part of that experiential learning program. That's a great explanation of digital marketing, and certainly a great explanation of what Newfound Marketing do. I want to pick up on a point you made way earlier on in the conversation, and you said it, and then you made this comment, and then there was another point in my journey, and then you passed on that changed some of your thought processes. What was that point in your journey?
Yeah, so in 2017, I had a heart attack at 39, and that was, as many of the life-changing events that I've had, that was the biggest thing ever. It's one of those things where, when I look back now, all those long hours and sitting and, I think making some maybe not healthy eating choices, because again, quick lunch, they need to get something quick, need to get back to the office, need to do this, need to work on that, skipping meals, like those kind of things, they all catch up and add up over time. And unfortunately for me, I caught up in probably one of the worst possible ways. But that said, while it was a life-changing event, at the same time, it's maybe one of the other better things that's happened to me as well, because the changes that I had to make in the lifestyle, right? So like the work-life balance piece, as much as I was trying to have that before, it was even more so after that. And that became, again, about how do I grow the team? How do I delegate more things, for the people on my team, and give them more areas to work on. And that's huge. Like one of the things with our company, anyone who comes to work for us, people ask me questions like, I need to do this. And I'm like, no, sure. Like take the afternoon if you need it. I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah, of course. Like it's really, and our company, the team members that we have, they're young, and my opinion on that is, while yes, they need to work hard, they also need to be able to go out and experience life. So, having their evenings and their weekends, and unfortunately not being able to travel, definitely not the best thing in the last few years, but having the evenings and the weekends, I think, is super important. You don't want, for me, like, I don't want staff working all the time. They need to rest and recharge and then come back with fresh ideas. And I think that's super important. And that's important for me as well. Like, I made those changes as well. So, I make sure that some of the things that I would do before, I don't do anymore. So, like, I actually have a rule. I kind of put this in place, actually, even I looked at it a little bit before, and I call it my 5 to 9 or 9 to 5 and the 5 to 9 rule. And so basically 9 to 5, like most people, it is work and go and go and go and, work hard, not work tirelessly, but work hard and get results. That is the 9 to 5. When 5 o'clock comes, it's, try to put the phone on, do not disturb, no work, no business, come home. It's two things. It's a couple of things. It's family time and me time. So it's time where come home, cook supper with the kids, taxi the kids at this point now, wherever they have to go and do things. But at the same time, I need to be healthy as well, because if I'm not healthy physically and mentally, then that has an impact on everyone that I work with and deal with. So for me, that would be in the winter, it's, taking the time to go and play hockey. And in the summer, it's mostly doing more running. And this year, a little bit more golf. But it's really taking those times. And then after 9, and maybe it's an age thing, but after 9, if I have the energy, I'll go back and do some more work for the most part. But that's a rule that I've had now for quite some time. And I think one thing that's kind of struck me is I spoke with someone that I shared this rule with years ago, and they recently had kids, and they're like, I do that now.
Yeah.
And I think, like, it's when I look at how much work and time and desire and like how we always need to be on today, I don't think we take enough time to be off as well. And I think, like, that has a serious impact in terms of, like, just, some of the approaches that we take sometimes and some of the things that we do. So it's, for me, it's making a shift to be more off than on, which is really weird coming from a guy whose business solely relies on you being on your phone for the most part. But I think, like, whether you're an employee, a dad, a mom, an owner, whatever it is, like, taking time to switch off is probably equally or more as important it is to be on all the time. So, like, those were changes that I made, and they're changes that that I advocate for quite a bit if I can, because it's huge and it can have a big impact. And the thought for me, like, when that happened, and then the first couple of days of that, I wouldn't be around to see my kids grow up, and all the moments and memories that I would absolutely miss would be ridiculous. And then even then for the team and where the company can go, and the fact that they rely on me, as a company, and the clients that rely on me, and those kind of things. So those are the things. So, like, for people who know me, I talk about my kids a lot. Like, a lot. I share a lot of stuff on social media in certain places about them a lot. People I work with, I talk about them a lot. Like, they are a big part of my life. And so the fact that I could have missed everything after, like, in the last 4 years and beyond, I had to make the change. And I did. And, now it's, when I get to talk to people, it's, calm down, slow down. There's a quote that I saw yesterday, I think, that I really liked. And I think it was more along the lines of, when you get tired, rest, but don't quit.
Yeah. I've never heard anybody articulate their responsibility in such a healthy way. You feel responsible to so many people, but the way that you describe your responsibility is such a healthy way, really inspiring, Sheldon. I have to tell you that. we often ask our guests, people that have had a wonderful journey, and indeed you've had one, and a great. You've told your journey here today. It's fascinating. But we often ask our guests to leave the audience with a small takeaway. What would a piece of advice be from a fellow from Cowhead who's had such an interesting journey?
A biggest one would be to not limit what you can do. I think we see a lot of things especially if if you stay on your phone a lot and you follow social media, is to not limit your thinking in terms of what you can do, but then also realize that you cannot do those things alone. And Alan, actually, there's a quote that you always keep saying that always kind of comes back to me for that one. And that is the one, the rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that's pretty much the same thing is if you've got ideas and you've got things and aspirations of things that you want to have, you can't do them yourself. You need to find people around you, and not everyone that shares exactly the same ideas that you have. You need to also have people who don't share those ideas, because you need to find people who can come around you so you can learn new things. And if everyone is the same, then it's hard. Then you're not going to make change, right? So you need to have different views. It doesn't mean that you're not going to, always go through and have everything come out to be the same. But you need to be able to understand the views and opinions that other people have, respect them. Don't worry about your limits, and just be able to and don't think, especially for us that are here in Newfoundland, of where you are, of this is what we, this is geographically, this is what we're bound to. Digitally, actually, I can't even say the world, because now we're seeing space travel, and Captain Kirk just went in space, right? So after 50
at
years,
the age of 90
years, right? So can you imagine what he must have been thinking at 90? Doing all these shows about space exploration, and now at 90 he gets to go and do it. Right? So that may not have been in the cards back when he started, and now here he is, right? Space.
Great advice, Sheldon. Jerry, your final thoughts, mate.
Well, it's interesting, Alan. We created this platform for inspiration. And despite the fact that I've been working by Sheldon's side since August of 2020, and I really appreciate that privilege, getting to know you today, I've learned things about you that I didn't even know. So I think it's just a pleasure. And I think anyone watching this will understand why I wanted to be part of what you're doing. It's special. We could have dug a lot deeper into the digital space, but we didn't have time. Despite the fact that we have the internet, we do have some commitments to some other people and clients. So we're going to let Sheldon get back to that, because I know he has a meeting coming up. So thanks, Sheldon, for coming on today. And I look forward to working and chatting with you more.
Thanks, guys. This has been great.
Well, another wonderful conversation on Gale Force Winds with Sheldon Payne, the owner and Chief Operating Officer of Newfound Marketing, based right in St. John's, Newfoundland. Here's a guy started his journey in the Great Northern Peninsula of Newfoundland in a little place called Cowhead. And if you don't know where that is, I'd encourage you to look that up on a map, because it's one beautiful place to come from. It's one beautiful place to visit. And Sheldon was not afraid of an adventure. He made his journey into the big city of St. John's and off to Montreal and London. But the draw of Newfoundland pulled him back, and that's a beautiful thing. And that's a beautiful part of his journey. And we in Atlantic Canada, and particularly Newfoundland, are certainly happy that he came back. I've never heard any of our guests define their responsibility in such a healthy way. Sheldon is a type of guy that believes in people, believes that people can thrive, but he believes that they have to thrive together. And we use that quote just at nearing the end of the conversation, that a rising tide floats all boats, and indeed it does. But there's one thing that I really enjoyed the most about the conversation here today, Sheldon, and that was that every step of your journey, you learned something from it. You looked at it as an opportunity to learn, to make yourself better, so that you can contribute to society better in a more sophisticated way. And that was fascinating to hear the way you described that. I too like to leave the audience with my own small piece of advice. And this comes from the heart, mate. The world needs more Sheldon Payne.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Winds. That's Gale Force Winds, WINS.com.